Hi, I'm Clemens, and in this video I will show you all there is to know about Folder Hider. Folder Hider is a program for a Windows computer, version Vista and up, that enables you to hide a folder. Perhaps I should explain what exactly a folder is. First of all, there are some synonyms that are also often used and have the exact same meaning. Instead of using the word folder, we could also use directory or map. Imagine that your hard disk is a tree and that all the files in this disk would be leaves. In that case, a folder would be a branch that holds a group of leaves and sub-branches with each their own set of leaves. Everybody who has access to your computer can easily see and open any of these files. When we started Folder Hider, you saw a fading folder to illustrate the capability of Folder Hider to hide a folder. If you have seen this plenty of times, you can skip this by simply clicking the mouse button when the mouse is over Folder Hider or by simply pressing a key on the keyboard. There are many reasons why you might want to hide a folder with files and subfolders, so that not just everybody has access to these files. For businesses, it is quite obvious that you do not want all network users to be able to access all files. Not everybody needs to know where you buy your goods at what prices. And also, for private persons, there are multiple reasons to hide one or more folders. You might hold a surprise party for your spouse. Students that share a computer probably do not want every other user to see his or her letters to family members. You want to be sure that your young children do not accidentally delete your text documents. And of course, everybody has got some files that are simply private. Is there a way to be absolutely sure that nobody is capable of accessing your private files? Unfortunately, no. If a top hacker, or for instance the NSA, would really like access to your personal files, and if they would be willing to spend some serious time into this, then I'm afraid that there's no way to be absolutely sure that they cannot get access. But having said that, we can surely make it difficult to perhaps extremely difficult for them to get access to your files. Windows itself provides you with the opportunity to create users with passwords. Users cannot always get access to the documents in the private folders of other users. However, this is all protected by just one password. Other users might see you typing it or even guess it. And if you have created a different user to store some private material, then you have to change to this user each time that you want access. Also, it is quite conspicuous that there are, for instance, 3 users on a computer where only 2 people are using that computer. So in order to get some real protection, you will need a program that is capable of hiding folders and/or files. Topsys offers 4 kinds of programs that can be used to hide folders and/or files. Folder Hider is our program that lets you hide and unhide folders. When folders are hidden, access to all Windows users is restricted. We created Folder Hider for the demanding private individual and small to mid-sized companies. Large companies have system administrators that can grant or deny certain users access to certain folders. But what if you do not have a system administrator? Well, if you do not have a system administrator, then you can simply use Folder Hider to make sure that certain people have access to certain files and others do not. Folder Hider can also hide folders across a Windows network. Folders hidden with Folder Hider are not accessible, so using recently opened file list will not get people access to files that are located in your hidden folders. Folder Hider uses 3 techniques. It hides your folder just as Map Hider does. It blocks access for everybody to your folder, and it also changes your folder into a network folder. So even if a hacker could break the blocking part, he or she would be diverted to the network folder when trying to open your folder. Some of our competitors also use a way to block access to your private folder. They do not use hiding and diverting. When using Windows Explorer, they usually display a lock next to the protected folder. We thought it best not to do this. We know that experienced users can make our hidden folders visible, but even then they still cannot get access. And we think this is better than displaying a lock which shouts to the potential hacker, "Pick me, pick me." After all, a lock clearly states, here is something hidden and worth hacking. Again, we want to make clear that even although an experienced user may be able to show the folders we have hidden, this is not a normal state for a computer. Someone will only put a computer in that state when he or she has decided to do some serious digging on your computer. And last but not least, Folder Hider also has the capability to encrypt files. As it is rumored that the NSA has cracked AES, or at least has a backdoor, we use more than just AES to encrypt these files. Our second program is Map Hider. Map Hider is capable of hiding a folder, but it cannot restrict access to that folder. Any user can hide a folder in Windows, but Map Hider goes one step further. So most Windows users will not be able to get access to your hidden folders. But as access to folders is not denied, any user could make use of the recently opened file lists. Although a user will no longer see files in your hidden folders, as the folder itself will not show in Windows Explorer, the location of a file is noted in recently opened file list. Clicking on such a file in a recently opened file list will open the file. So it may be important to occasionally clear these recently opened file lists if you're using Map Hider. If you want a higher level of security, you will need to use Folder Hider. Also, for options like encryption and the ability to hide Windows network folders, you will need Folder Hider. The third program that we have is Directory Hider. Directory Hider is a simplified version of Map Hider and it is free. As it is free, it has some constraints. There is just one user. The benefit is that you do not need to log in. The downside is that you cannot have multiple users and so you do not have deniability. There is a maximum of a total number of 10 hidden folders. There is no limit to the number of times that you hide or unhide a folder. Each folder may only hold a maximum of 10 files. Of course, you may use a compression tool to increase this number of files. It is possible to use Map Hider and unhide folders that you made hidden using Folder Hider and vice versa. It is a matter of creating a user with the correct logon credentials. Directory Hider does not have this ability. Also, some extra options like Micromise are not present in Directory Hider. The fourth program we have is File Hider. File Hider uses one phony file and you can add one or more files to this file. The files that are added are all encrypted using our own algorithm. And they are invisible even to the very experienced users. The only giveaway might be that a text file containing just a few words happens to be very large. This program offers perhaps the best protection. The downside is that if you want to use these files, then that will cost considerable more time. Map Hider and Folder Hider can hide thousands of files in a single folder within perhaps a tenth of a second. File Hider has to decrypt each and every file and afterwards it will have to encrypt them if you made some changes. We think File Hider is better suited for people that want to hide or perhaps transport just a couple of files. Besides these programs, we have some special editions and special versions, for instance for programmers that want to use a hidden folder to store the installation date of their program, etc. And as a fifth program, we also offer Email Icon Locker, a program that can be used to prevent other users from accessing your email by simply clicking a mouse button. Okay, let's continue with Folder Hider. When you start Folder Hider, it will open with the default user. The default user, however, cannot hide or unhide a folder. So the first thing we need to do is to log in as a user. And as this is the first time that we use Folder Hider, we need to create a user. When you create a user, you must realize that the capitalization of the username is important. User John with a capital J and user John with a capital J and a capital N at the back are two different users. In this way, phishing for username and password has become much more difficult, but it also gives you what is called deniability. You might show a certain person folders that you have hidden as John with just the capital J and not show them the folders that you have hidden as John with two capitals. To create a user, we go to the menu and choose Users followed by Add User. We can now add a user. Let's name him John. with one capital. Password TIMPW4FH exclamation mark. When you choose a password, make sure that you can remember it. But you must also be sure that it is not easy for others to guess. So don't use any passwords that apparently are most often used, like names of family members, any dates that are important to you, and especially don't use the first 6 letters of the keyboard, which in many cases would be QWERTY or AZERTY. And the most common password seems to be 1234. Passwords that are hard to crack are called strong passwords, and they hold at least one number and at least one character that isn't a number or a letter. But how can it be easy to remember a strong password? If you take a sentence and use a letter for each word, then TIMPW4FH exclamation mark stands for "This is my password for folder hider!" exclamation mark. And now the password TIMPW4FH exclamation mark is a lot easier to remember. Of course, you must realize that after having seen this, perhaps 75% of all folder hider users might now use this password. But I have given you a way to easily create your own strong password that you can remember. And here we retype the password and make sure it is identical. For us to be sure that you can still get access to the folders that you hide, we give you quite some opportunities to regain access if you lose any of your logon credentials, like the username and/or password. The first protection is the 6-digit security access number. Should you forget your password, you may enter this 6-digit number. Once you entered the correct username and this 6-digit number, then you will be presented with 3 questions that must be answered. Both the questions and the answers are entered in this screen. As a 6-digit number, I will use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a number you should never use. Question 1, I will ask for my name, and the answer should be Clemens. At the second question, I will ask for my favorite car, and the answer should be Rolls-Royce. The model isn't important, any will do. As the last question, I will enter a trick question. I will ask for my favorite color. And the answer should be tomato. It is obvious for any human that although a tomato has a specific color, it is not a color. But the computer does not look for realism, it just checks that you enter whatever you specified as the answer for that question. You may enter as questions and answers whatever you like, but we recommend that you do it in a way so that you will know what to enter when the questions get asked. As we are done in this screen, I will press the Add User button, but before I do so, I should explain the other buttons. If I changed my mind and do not want to add a user and want to go back to the main screen, I can press the Back button. But everything is okay, so I will now press the Add User button. If everything was entered correctly, then we will now get a message that we urge you to make use of the provided recover options, and that you should enter a valid email address. I press the OK button, and at this point the recover options screen is opened. I will enter my email address. info@folderhider.eu, and I will retype it here as well. Entering an email address is mandatory, so you must at least enter a valid email address. The email address you entered here will only be used to send you your own logon credentials. You may choose what data needs to be provided before the system will resend the logon credentials to the email address provided here. We would advise you to keep it as it is. You may make it harder by also asking for the 6-digit security question or the password. But the more you ask, the harder it becomes when you forget something. At this point, I will only keep the checking part of the username selected. But by not selecting password or 6-digit security question, only the email address and the name without minding capitalization have to be provided in order to send the login credentials to the email address I specified here. If I press Save, two messages will pop up. The first states that an email with my login credentials was sent to the email address that I just provided. You should keep that email in a safe place. And the second message asks if we want a screen where all login credentials are displayed so that we can copy and paste it into a text file, which you might store somewhere. If we click on Yes, a next pop-up will ask if we want the password to be readable or not. But for now, we will assume that the email will arrive and that we can access that email at a later stage. So right now we will choose No. I will now quickly add a second user. So I go to the Users, Add User, John with 2 capitals is the new username, TIMPW4FH exclamation mark as the password. So I have to retype it here. Again, I will use the numbers 1 through 6 as my 6-digit security question access number. Question 1 is the letter A, answer 1 is the letter B, question 2 is the letter C, answer 2 is the letter D, question 3 is the letter E, and finally the answer, let's make it a 3. Of course you understand that this is an example that is not very safe. We press Add User and OK. For the email I will again enter twice info@folderhider.eu, info@folderhider.eu. Save. OK. No. And we're back in the main screen. When you have added a user, it is important to know that you are not automatically logged in as the user you just created. You can see this because the username is still default user. After having added this second user, I just realized that I have made it too easy for a potential hacker. So I want to make changes to this user. In the menu I choose Users, Edit User. And as I am not logged in as any user, I get the error message saying that I should log in as the user I want to change. So first I need to log on as the user I want to change. In the main menu I choose Users, Login User. Let's test that the username is case sensitive. And as a user I enter John without capitals. And as the password I enter TIMPW4FH exclamation mark, which is the password for both users. When I press Login, I get the error message stating that my login credentials are not correct. And as a penalty, after pressing OK, I will go to an empty screen and I can only continue after 5 seconds. As I am quite impatient, I click the Continue button. But nothing happens. Only when I have waited the penalty time can I press the Continue button. I can see that the time is passed when the button changes color when I move my mouse over the button. When you make a mistake and accidentally go to the screen, that will be annoying. But you must realize that this is for your protection. Without this, a person could try many combinations in a short while. But as each error increases the penalty time with 1 second, phishing for username and password by simply trying is no longer a real option. I press the Continue button and this time I get back to my login screen and now enter John with 2 capitals. The password is still in the text box and I press Login. I go back to the main screen and I can see my username John in all capitals. If I would have added some numbers in my name, then these would have been removed. This is all to ensure that your username is not already given away to someone who happens to look at your screen. If I now go to Users, Edit User, I go to the Edit screen. But first a pop-up shows a message stating that you cannot change your username and or password and or 6-digit security access number. Why is this, you may ask? The reason is simple. When you create a folder on a hard disk or USB stick, then a hidden and secured folder is created on that drive. In this folder, your login credentials are stored in an encrypted file. We have to do this because you now can take out the drive or USB stick, put it in a different computer, install Folder Hider, create the same user, and you can again unhide your folders. If we didn't create such a hidden folder, then you could change your username, password and 6-digit security access number. But then you wouldn't be able to unhide your folders on a different computer. Should you still feel the need to make changes to either the username, password and or the 6-digit security access number, then you should first unhide all the folders hidden by this user, and after that you should create a new user and hide all the folders you want hidden using this new user account. As this can be quite laborsome, we would advise you not to do this unless you would fear or know that your logon credentials are compromised. By the way, should you after some time realize that you have forgotten to unhide a certain folder, then you can still log in as the old user and unhide the folder and again hide it as the new user. So, let's make some changes. If I would try to change any of the fields I shouldn't change, I will see that I am not even capable of making changes. Trying to add a few letters to the username simply will not work. So I go to question 1 and let's ask for my favorite pizza. And the answer should of course be Hawaii. Then my mother's name. Answer Leonora. Then a trick question. First job. And the answer should be none, as I've always been self-employed. Now I press update user. We now get the opportunity to change the email address, but as this hasn't changed, I press save. And again we see a pop-up saying that the login credentials were sent. And after that we get again a pop-up giving us the chance to copy and paste the login credentials. The changes we just made are also emailed to the email address I entered. But this time I will want to print my login credentials. So I choose yes. I can now choose if I want the password to be readable or not. As I have chosen a password I can remember, and of course I could always look it up in my email, I will choose no. I select all the text either by mouse or by pressing Ctrl A, then Ctrl C to copy. I open Notepad. I press Ctrl V and I can now print and or save the text. If I now press back, I will go back to the main screen. Before we start hiding a folder, I want to show you how to log out and dive a bit deeper into logging in. To log out, you simply go to Users, Logout User. And should the main screen have contained some hidden folders, then these are now cleared. So before we can hide a folder, we need to log in as a user. In the main screen, we choose Users, Login User. Before I enter my login credentials, I realize that I have forgotten my password. Luckily, I did not forget the username. Should I have forgotten the username, then I must look this up. Either in my email, or on a piece of paper if I printed it out, or if I saved it somewhere, then I must look it up in a document. Before I can enter my 6-digit security access number, I must enter my correct username. So I enter John with 1 capital. And then I press the I lost my password button. I press OK. It will now let me enter my 6-digit security access number. So I enter 12345 6 and press OK. As the answers to the questions I enter. Clemens, Rolls Royce, tomato, and press OK. The computer will now show a pop-up with my password and it will ask me to remember it for future use. I press OK and I am logged in. Once I'm logged in, I can start hiding folders. To hide a folder, I press the middle button at the bottom. I select this PC, C and temp as the folder I want to hide, and I press OK. And if I wait a bit, I will see that the chosen folder is now added to the list of my hidden folders. To hide a second folder, I press the middle button, this PC, C, but now I will select test as the second folder to hide and press OK. I will now log out and again log in as the same user. If we now take a look at the list of my hidden folders, we can see that the list is empty. Where are the folders that we have just hidden? The program does not keep an internal list somewhere of which folders you have hidden and unhidden. As you can use drives across multiple computers, there is simply no way of presenting you with a list of all your hidden folders. In order to see which folders are hidden by you on a certain drive, you click on the left button at the bottom, wait a moment, and the system will display all your drives on which you can hide a folder. If you forgot to plug in a USB drive, plug it in, wait until it is recognized and press the button Rescan for available drives. Select the drive that you want to see that contains your hidden folders, so C in this example, and press Scan Selected Drive for my hidden folders. We now see that the temp and test folder on the C drive are listed. When hiding a folder, it is important to know that you cannot simply hide just any folder. There are folders used by Windows like Documents, or My Documents depending on your Windows version, Program Files, Users and Windows. To protect you from yourself, we cannot allow you to hide any of these folders or any of the subfolders inside these folders. So I press the Hide Folder button, select a folder ABC inside the My Documents folder and press OK. I see an error message that states that I selected a folder that is essential to Windows or is inside a folder that is essential to Windows. This message may also occur if there are many subfolders and or files with very long names inside the folder you wish to hide. In theory, this folder ABC could be hidden as it is by itself not an essential Windows folder, but as it is inside an essential Windows folder, we simply cannot take any chances. And you may not hide this folder. How would you continue in such a case? Open Windows Explorer, select the ABC folder inside the My Documents folder with the left mouse button and press the right mouse button and select Cut. Go to the root of the drive that contains this folder and click the left mouse button. Click the right mouse button and select Paste. If I now press the Hide Folder button and select the ABC folder, there will be no error message. When you relocate a folder like this, you must realize that some programs that think that certain files are still located in the old place will mention that some files are not found. In most cases, you may select the new location where those files may be found. If this does not work or if you encounter any problems, then you should relocate the folder back to its original position after unhiding. For example, inside the ABC folder is a Word document called test. If I open Word and see my recently opened file list, I can see that it expects this file in the ABC folder of the Documents folder. Selecting this document will give me a file not found error. So I go back to Folder Hider and unhide my ABC folder. I open Word and open the test file manually by going to the new location of the ABC folder. I close Word, and in Folder Hider I will again hide the ABC folder. I now go back to Word, and in my recently opened file list I see the text document, and this time the ABC folder is at the correct location. The folder is hidden, but Word does not know this or check for this. I will double click the file. And now I get again the file not found error. Because Folder Hider does not only hide the folder, but it also denies access, Word cannot open the file and will give the file not found error. To unhide a folder, select the folder you wish to unhide from the list and press the Unhide button. Let us do this again for the temp folder. Let us first see that the folder is indeed hidden. I will open up Windows Explorer, and as you can see, there is no temp folder. Back to Folder Hider, I select the temp folder and press the Unhide Selected Folder button. Instantly, the temp folder is removed from the list. We now go back to Windows Explorer, and in the time it took us to do this, we can see that the temp folder on the C drive is now again visible. And that is basically all there is to it. It is that easy to hide and unhide folders on your drives. In the main menu under Help, there are the following items: Q&A, short for question and answer, View Help, Read subtitles as help, Website, Compare editions, Show trial days left, and Info about. If I click on Q&A in the Help menu, you will see a text screen with questions and answers about Folder Hider. No matter which language you have chosen, this text is in English. As this video and this Q&A text together is your user manual, we thought it best to keep both in English. The video may have subtitles in different languages, but it is still spoken in English. By not translating all of this and keeping it in English, we can be sure that your manual is correct. And therefore, when you want to consult either of these as the manual of this program, you should do this in English. I mention this because someone might make alterations, and also the translations in the subtitles of the video could be incorrect. Below Index, there is a list of all items or questions. Suppose I would like to know why the username is case sensitive. I place my mouse somewhere on that line, click my left mouse button, and now the cursor is somewhere on that line. To move the screen to the item I want to read, I have three options. I can press the function key F4 like this, and press the function key F5 to go back up again. Or again, after placing the cursor on a line, I can go to that item by pressing the Search Selected Index Item button with F4 and the indexed folder, and again go up again by pressing the Move to the Top button with F5 and an arrow pointing up. If I want to search for a word, I can enter that in the text field and press F3 or the Search button with F3 and a magnifying glass. Suppose I want to know something about translation. Perhaps I want to make a change in the translation. I can press the function key F5 to make sure I'm all the way on the top. In the text field I enter Translation. And I press the function key F3. Each time I press the F3 key, the system will search towards the bottom of the text for a new occurrence of the word translation. If I search for this a number of times, I see a message indicating that in the part of the text between the end and where my cursor is, this text can no longer be found. When I'm finished with this, I can press the back button to go back to the main screen. If I press View Help from the Help menu, I can see that the video player opens up and it will start this help video. I will put it on pause. The subtitles will be in the language I chose in Folder Hider. If I open the menu by pressing the arrow down button, I can search for chapters or words in any of the over 60 translated languages. If I want to see a video showing me all there is to know about the video help player, I can press this button and select helpvideo.avi. For now, I will close the video help player. As you know, we have a comprehensive, indexed and searchable help video. This video is perfect if you have no or little experience on the matter. Of course, you can also use the video if you want a quick reminder of how something works. But we can understand that if you want to refresh your memory on a subject, that a quick peek in a manual can be a faster way to do this. So we created a manual out of all subtitles. For Folder Hider, we put these subtitles in the website. The advantage of putting it on the website instead of having it on a screen in the program itself is that you can now have it side by side. I click on Read Subtitles as Help from the Help menu. A browser will open up the folderhider.eu website at the correct page. If I would change the language here, then I would see the subtitles in the chosen language. For now, I will leave it as it is. It is a bit strange that the manual contains lines like "Hi, I'm Clemens" and "If you press this button," but besides that, it will tell you exactly how the program Folder Hider works. Because it is quite a lot of plain text, we divided the whole text into 10 chapters. So one chapter is not about a specific item or so. It is simply a certain number of lines of the whole text. If I wanted to make a change into a translation, I could search for the word translation in the text box. If I press on Send, I can see that the word translation was found at least 4 times in chapter 2 and at least 3 times in chapter 5. So I click on chapter 2 and now I press Ctrl F. I type translation. The browser highlights all occurrences so I can easily find them. If you remember, when I searched for the word translation, it mentioned that in chapter 2 there would be at least 2 occurrences. And actually there are 6. One is outside the text and 5 are over here. Sometimes sentences are translated per sentence, but sometimes a translated sentence actually contains 2 or 3 sentences. As the website counted the number of translated sentences that at least contain the word translation, the actual number of occurrences can be higher. I can now go directly to chapter 5, or I can go back and try a different search. When you click on Website in the Help menu, the folderhider.eu website will open. Here you can, for instance, change some user settings or purchase a license. When we discuss the registration, we will dive a bit deeper into the website. If I want to see the most common differences between Folder Hider, Map Hider and Directory Hider, I can press Compare Editions in the Help menu. Most of the differences are mentioned here. Some small differences, like the fact that making changes to the font is stored in Folder Hider and is not stored in Map Hider, is not mentioned. There are 2 differences that are the most important. First, Folder Hider has a much higher level of security. Only Folder Hider has the ability to hide and lock folders on a network drive. So if you have a Windows server and you do not want all your employees to have the ability to open company files like an Excel sheet with all salaries, then you need Folder Hider. And again, I press the back button to go back to the main screen. For as long as you haven't registered, you can see the number of trial days left by clicking on this menu item, Show Trial Days Left. I will close this pop-up. If I press the Info About in the Help menu, I see a pop-up with the Topsys logo, a link to the Topsys company website. To close this screen, I can simply press the OK button. In the main menu under File, there are the following items: Configuration, Recover, Check for Update, Translation Correction, Encrypt, Decrypt, Future Updates, Micromise Application, Main Screen and Exit. The configuration option in the File menu has the following options: Language, Backup Configuration File, Restore Backup Configuration File, Reset Configuration File, Font Selection, Reset Font, Show Unique PC Code, Registration, Reactivation, List Unused Registration Keys, Deactivate Key, Map Network Drives. If you select Language from the configuration menu in the File menu, you can select a language for this program. I can select Chinese and press the Choose Language button. Immediately, all words and sentences are now in Chinese. Let us pretend that I can read Chinese, and I will open up the File menu. Configuration, Language, and I will now again choose English as our language and press the Choose Language button. Folder Hider has an internal configuration file. You might make a backup so that at some point you may restore this when there is a problem. When you added a new user, it might be wise to make a backup of your configuration file. File, Configuration, Backup Configuration File. When you encounter a problem with the internal configuration file, this could be due to a read error on your hard drive, you might consider restoring a backup of the configuration file that you made at some point. In order to do so, you go to File, Configuration, Restore Backup Configuration File. And now you can choose Yes to restore the configuration file. When restoring the backup configuration file does not fix your problem, you might try a reset. It is important to know that in most cases all users will be removed and have to be added to the system manually when resetting the configuration file. You can reset the configuration file by choosing File, Configuration, Reset Configuration File. I read the warning and still I press the Yes button. The software quits and I restart Folder Hider. I will now try to log on as John. However, this no longer works as all users have been removed from the system by resetting the configuration file. I will now re-enter the user John. John with one capital, password TIMPW4FH exclamation mark, and I retype that here. The 6-digit number again, 1 through 6. And these questions and answers do not have to match with what I had previously entered. So I enter name, Clemens, first computer, 4.77 megahertz, 8086. Favorite pizza, Hawaii. Add user, OK. info@folderhider.eu, and here the same email address. Save, OK. No. And now I will log in again as John with one capital. I can see that I can indeed log in again, and now I will see which folders I have hidden in my C drive. And we're back where we were. As you can see, it finds that the test folder is still hidden. Folder Hider lets you adjust the font size and font type. We thought this necessary because in some languages the characters get so small that another font or a bigger font will make it better readable. But of course, you may just choose a larger font to make the text as it is more readable for you. When you selected a new font, the program will remember this for future use. It is very easy to change a font. In the configuration menu, inside the file menu, choose font selection. You may choose almost anything you want. If it becomes too small to read for anybody, or if it becomes much too big, the system will automatically reset the font. The system does some checking to see if not all buttons get too large and start overlapping. But this test is not perfect. You may choose a certain font and size where buttons overlap a little or one side of the button is no longer displayed. And although you may perhaps prefer larger text over aesthetic, we would like to ask you not to choose a font size that is too big. Let us see the font selection in action. I choose size 12. You see that here everything gets bigger. Choosing a font size that in retrospect is too big is never a real problem, as you can reset the font. To reset the font, select Reset Font in the configuration file inside the file menu. And you see everything is back in its original size. Each computer has a unique PC code, and Folder Hider is registered to that PC code. It may be necessary for you to know the unique PC code of your computer. Perhaps you want to know which license of Folder Hider is coupled to which PC, or perhaps you want to move your license to a different computer. If you click on Show Unique PC Code, there will be a pop-up with the unique PC code of this computer. Folder Hider has a 30-day trial period. During this trial period, all functions are enabled. If you haven't registered after 30 days, you will not be able to hide a new folder. You will, however, still be able to unhide any folders you made hidden with Folder Hider. Should you want to know the number of trial days left, then you can simply click on Show Trial Days inside the Help menu. If you want to keep using Folder Hider after the trial period, then you need to register. In order to register, you need to go to www.folderhider.eu. Start by registering yourself on this website. So I type a username and the password. And of course I make sure that this is a password that I can remember, and an email address. Now, to be sure that you are human, we use CAPTCHA, and they show you sometimes numbers, sometimes 2 words, and it's meant that you type that here. If you can't read very well what it says there, we press this button here, and again, well, I can read this, 8111. And now I press I register and agree with the terms. I can see that an email has been sent to the email account I just entered, and that email will contain a link on which I need to click, so that we can be sure that you did receive the email. I will open up my email account. Now, and here we have the email, and I press on the link. And now we get to see this page, confirmation success, and I can now log on to this website. So in the website, I will press login, username, password, login. I can see here that I'm actually logged in to the website. Should you have ever created an account at another of our Topsys websites, then you may skip the website account creation, as you have one account for all our products. On the home page, I can see the price for one license. And you will need one license per computer. The price of a license depends on where you live and whether you are a person or a company. As I live in the Netherlands, which is part of the EU, the website will now present a price including VAT. And so the VAT is added to the price. If you or your company live outside the EU, then we do not have to calculate the VAT and the price will be without VAT. If your company is in the EU but outside the Netherlands, then we also do not have to calculate VAT. If this is the case, then you can later on enter your VAT number by using the settings menu. The website will determine the country that you are in, and it will check that you are not behind a proxy. A proxy could be used to pretend that you are somewhere else. If the website has any doubts, it will calculate the VAT. All the way at the bottom, below the colored eye catcher, you will see if the website will calculate the VAT based on your location. As I'm using the internet from within the Netherlands, it will. If I would have been, for instance, in China, then it would have mentioned this price and there would be no mention of VAT. But what if I were a company within the EU but outside the Netherlands? If that is the case, you should make some changes to your user profile before you make the payment. You can alter your user profile or user preferences, however you would like to call it, in the settings menu. We would advise you to take a look there anyway. I click on settings, and now I could let Topsys know that I do not want any commercial emails at all, or if I wanted help unhiding a folder, I could flip this and make up some code words. Also, I can see some information about my visits, so I can check if perhaps someone else logged onto the website with my credentials. The website will show the IP number at the right over here. But as it is unwise to let everybody know your IP address, I will keep this part out of sight. On the personal settings page, you can enter address, city, country, and the name you want on the invoice. The company settings page is of course the page we need if we want to enter a VAT number. Basically, it is the same page as the personal settings page. However, at the bottom there is a text field VAT number. When you enter a VAT number, the website will of course check the validity of the VAT number. The name on the invoice should match the name that the EU has for your company. And your current IP number should also be from the same country as where your company resides. Or to put it simply, you should now be in the same country as where your company resides. You only need to enter a VAT number if your company is buying from this website and if that company resides within the EU and outside the Netherlands. So companies outside the EU can skip this. I will now purchase 3 licenses. I simply click on 3 licenses and click on the Pay button. As soon as the payment has been concluded, the licenses and invoices will be available on the website. In order to register Folder Hider, I must enter the registration code from one of my licenses. Each license can only be used once, so I need one license per computer. If you have multiple versions of Windows set up on one computer, then you can use one license for all of them, provided they are all Windows Vista or higher. There are 3 ways I can view my license registration keys. Just to be clear, a license registration number or code is the same as a license registration key. In the website, I open up Invoices and select the last invoice. I click on Open. I can now open or save my invoice as a PDF. As you can see on the PDF, the license keys are stated here. Or I can go to Licenses. I will now see all licenses for all Topsys programs that I have. As none of these licenses have been activated, it doesn't matter which I choose. So I can select with the left mouse button the entire registration key, click the right mouse button and select Copy. Or I can click on Open. I can now see the software name, license number, invoice date, the unique PC code on which the software is activated. This will contain a value after registration, and I can see until when I can download and install any updates. If there is no unique PC code, then that means that this registration key is free. Also, I can see that I have no subscription on this license number and that there are 5 activations left for this key. So I select the entire license number with the left mouse button, click the right mouse button and select Copy. Should I want to buy a subscription, then I can press this button. As a third option, I can check my email. The license registration keys will be emailed to me. I open up my email and see here are the license registration keys. Again, with the left mouse button, I select the key, and with the right mouse button, I select Copy. Sending emails can go quite fast these days. But the time it takes for you to receive the email depends on a number of factors. As the license registration keys are instantly accessible after payment, you might decide not to wait for the email. I will start Folder Hider. File, Configuration, Registration. And in the text box, I click with the right mouse button and select Paste. After that, I click on Register, and that is all there is to it. I can check that the registration went well, because there's no longer an option to show the trial days left in the help menu. Another way is to click on Registration. This time I cannot enter the registration code, but it will show me the registration code. And as a third option, I can go to the website, go to Licenses, and I can already see that the unique PC code is stated here. I can also click on Open. And this time there's a unique PC code. And if I want to verify this PC code, then I can simply go to File, Configuration, Show Unique PC Code. And here I have the same code. I will now go back to the main screen. The registration key of Folder Hider is coupled to the unique PC code of your computer. In some cases, updating your computer, like upgrading your mainboard, will change the unique PC code. And that would be a problem, as Folder Hider will then no longer hide folders. What you need to do in that case is to use reactivation in the configuration menu inside the file menu. Reactivation will again couple your unique PC code with your registration key. Reactivation will only work once you have registered this version of Folder Hider. As my unique PC code didn't change, there is no reason to reactivate the software, and the program tells us this in a message. If your unique PC code changed, then there's also another way to reactivate Folder Hider. You can go to the website, go to Licenses, select the license and click on Open, and down below here there is a Reactivate button. Here I could enter a new unique PC code. If you decide to use this option, you must copy the entire key, that is with opening and closing brackets. Also, you should realize that using this option and entering a wrong unique PC code will cost you 1 registration. So it is safer to use reactivation through the software. If you no longer want to use folder hider on this computer, but on another computer, for instance, if you will sell your old computer and buy a new computer, then you need to select deactivate key. To continue with deactivation, I have to press the button to see how many reactivations are left. And if this number is more than 1, then I could continue deactivation, but I will press the back button. If I would have clicked on deactivate, then I would no longer have been able to hide a folder on this computer using folder hider. When you want to register folder hider, you will need your registration key, which you get after purchase. You can find this key in your email, or you can go to the folder hider website and look under licenses. But you can also click on list unused registration keys in the file configuration menu. This is actually by far the easiest way of registering your software. A screen opens, and in this screen I can enter the login name and the password that I used for the folderhider.eu website. When I entered those details, I click on Retrieved Unused Keys. And here comes a list with all the unused keys I have left. As we did some tests with this user, it's quite a long list. If I purchased 1 copy and didn't register this yet, then it will of course only contain that 1 key. If I purchased multiple keys, then it can be convenient to simply request here which keys are unused. After that, I can select a key and press the button Register Selected Key. The registration screen opens and my registration key is already entered in the text box. I only have to click on Register and the software is registered. You can check that the software is registered because in the Help menu there is no Show Trial Days left. And also I can click on Registration and it will tell me that the software has been registered. If I now click on List Unused Keys, then there's no longer a register button. When you have a network, it's more than likely that at some point you will want to hide a folder which is not located on a drive that is physically inside your computer. This folder may be on a Windows server or perhaps on another computer with a regular Windows version, just as long as it is Windows XP or higher. The drive will have to be NTFS formatted, but this is usually not a problem. There is, however, a difference between the Windows versions Vista 7, 8, 8.1 and Windows 10. If you're using Windows 10, then you're lucky and you do not have to use the option Map network drives. We will, however, show you how you can use them because that might be a problem even in Windows 10. For the users of Windows Vista 7, 8 and 8.1, however, it works a bit more difficult and you will have to use this Mapped Network Drives option once. At some point, Microsoft decided as a virus protection that a program cannot simply do just about anything. And with viruses in mind, that is a good thing. When hiding a folder, folder hider needs to perform some actions that not just any program can do. If a program like folder hider needs to do things that not just any program can do, it needs to be started as an administrator. You do not have to do anything for this. When folder hider starts, it will start as administrator. An administrator is a kind of superuser with elevated privileges. This administrator superuser, however, has one big problem in Windows Vista 7, 8 and 8.1. All mapped network drives to which you have access are prohibited for the administrator. Microsoft will without any doubts have its reasons to do so, but we think that if you make use of something as a superuser, then it also should be able to access all drives that you yourself can access without elevated privileges. And only in Windows 10 did they correct this problem. But as Microsoft simply denies folder hider access to the network drives that you have at some point mapped to your computer, we have to map these drives again to your computer, but now as an administrator with elevated privileges. Again, this does not apply if you're using Windows 10. I will start by showing you the problem. I open Windows Explorer. As you can see, I have a Q drive, which is mapped to the C drive of a computer called Demo PC. I would like to hide the temp folder on this Q drive. In Folder Hider, I click on the middle button, and I now have a problem. There is no Q drive to select. In the configuration menu inside the file menu, there is an option Map Network Drives. As I'm using Windows 10, it will show me a message stating there is no need for me to use this option. What needs to happen for older Windows versions is that I need to create a new mapped network drive that is linked to the physical drive on which I want to hide a folder. So in my case, I need to create a new drive that is mapped to the C drive of my computer called Demo PC. Experienced user may click directly on the button Use Mapped Drive in Folder Hider, where you can create a new mapped network drive. All other users, we recommend not to do this. In the list box, under Found Mapped Drives, you may find nothing or mapped network drives which were found in the past as a user without elevated privileges. So these should be the maps that you normally have access to. To be sure that we have all current mapped network drives, we press the button Rescan for mapped drives. A pop-up comes and it explains that Windows Explorer will be opened and that we have to double-click on a file called Find Mapped Drives. When I clicked on OK, the pop-up closed and Windows Explorer opened, and indeed a file called Find Mapped Drives is selected. When I double-click this file, I am outside the Folder Hider program. So it isn't Folder Hider that starts this program, but it is me as a user without elevated privileges. And that is why it can now find my mapped network drives to which I normally have access. This program stores the info in a text file and Folder Hider reads the text file. So I will execute this program by double-clicking it. And within a few seconds, I will see in Folder Hider that my mapped network drives are updated and my Windows Explorer screen closes. Just as in the beginning, when I opened Windows Explorer myself, I can see that there is a mapped network drive called Q, which maps to the C drive of my computer called Demo PC. I select this Q drive and click on Use Mapped Drive in Folder Hider, as this is a drive I want to use in Folder Hider. Should I have forgotten to select a Q drive, then I can either type whatever is behind the Q manually, or I can simply press OK, close, and select the Q drive and press the button again. In the pop-up, it is explained what needs to be done. I read it and click OK. Now a window opens that allows me to create a new mapped network drive. If I click here, I can see all available drive letters. I can see that the X drive isn't used yet. Next to the semicolon, which all drive letters have, there is no text behind it. I must not choose a letter where there is some text behind it, as these drive letters are already being used. So I select X. In the box below, I can either enter / backwards, computer name / backwards, drive letter, to where I want to map this X drive to. In my case, that would be / demo PC /C. However, I selected the Q drive a short while ago, and by doing so, this code is copied to the clipboard. So I will delete this and simply click the right mouse button and select Paste. And as you can see, it enters the same text. The advantage of this is that you do not have to think in terms of computer name and drive letter. You only have to know that you would like to hide a folder on what is normally known as the Q drive on your computer, and you can let the clipboard paste what really needs to be entered here. Now it is time to make sure that we make the correct selections in these two tick boxes here. The top one gives you the opportunity to reconnect to this mapped network drive at logon. We strongly recommend you to check this box, because otherwise you would have to use our mapped network drive option each time that you want to hide or unhide a folder on this mapped network drive. As this mapped network drive is only available when there are elevated privileges, chances are that you will only see this mapped network drive when you use folder hider and not when using some other program. This might be different for Windows 10, but as mentioned before, you should not use this option in Windows 10. The second tick box gives you the opportunity to connect to the drive of the selected computer using different references. Under normal conditions, you should not have to do this when using folder hider, because there's already an existing connection to that drive. And the computer knows this. So we leave this box unchecked. If we were making a connection to a network drive that this user without elevated privileges has no access to, then we would need to tick this box and enter the username and password of the computer that we would like to connect to. But as most people will only hide folders to the drives that they normally have access to, we will not dive deeper into that. So with only reconnect at logon checked, I press continue. After a short while, this screen closes and I can see that in folder hider under usable drives, I now have a new drive letter, the X. As I'm curious to see if it now will work, I go to the main screen and press the middle button. I can now select the X drive. I must keep in mind that if I want to hide a folder in what normally is the Q drive, that I must now select the X drive. It may be confusing due to Microsoft restrictions that there is no other way. In the X drive, I select the temp folder. I will now open Windows Explorer and select the Q drive. And just as expected, the temp folder is no longer visible. For many users, this may all be very complicated. Luckily, if you have Windows 10, it is really much easier to use mapped network drives. I open Windows Explorer and I see that the Q drive, that we didn't get to see in folder hider, has a little red cross in its picture. All I have to do is to click with the left mouse button once on the Q drive. It opens up in Windows Explorer, and as you can see, now the red cross is replaced by a small green line. If I now open folder hider and want to hide a folder on the Q drive, you can see that it is now able to find and use the Q drive. I will now scan the Q drive for my hidden folders, and as you can see, it finds the temp folder which we made hidden on the X drive. And I now make the folder visible and usable again by unhiding. This is of course a whole lot easier than all the things you have to do when you have an older version of Windows. The only downside is that each time that you start your computer and you haven't yet used the mapped network drive before you start folder hider, then you will have to click on the drive in Windows Explorer each time before folder hider can use it. Why is this, you may ask? All we can say is it's Microsoft. Perhaps you want to know if there's a weakness in the protection scheme of folder hider. We think folder hider has the best protection scheme to quickly protect a large number of files so that it becomes very difficult for a hostile user to gain access to your files. But having said that, you must always realize that 100% protection simply does not exist. If, for example, a group of hackers or the CIA or NSA were to get hold of your computer, and if they want access to your files, then at some point they will get access. The only thing you can do to further protect yourself is to encrypt your files. Folder hider has the ability to encrypt files and folders. Having said this, most people will not be visited by a group of hackers or the CIA. So for probably 99.99% of the population, the protection scheme provided by folder hider will be more than sufficient. In order for folder hider to hide any folders for you in a secure way, it will start as an administrator. This is also referred to as starting with elevated privileges. If you start Folder Hider or another program or application that needs elevated privileges, then the standard Windows UAC settings will show the message: do you want to allow this app to make changes to your PC? And you can only start the program by clicking yes. And by itself, it is a good thing that you are warned that a program starts up that can perform more than regular programs. However, for experienced users, getting this message each and every time that they start a program or application with elevated privileges is annoying. You should decide for yourself if you want these messages to appear each time you need elevated privileges or not. If you do not get these messages, then you will also not be warned if a bad program wants to perform a malicious deed. But then again, having these settings turned on is absolutely no guarantee that bad programs will not perform malicious deeds on your computer. If you turn UAC off, then you will no longer get these messages. We will now show you how to do this in Windows 10. For older Windows versions, you can search the internet for disabling UAC for Windows Vista 7, 8 or 8.1. In Windows, in the down left corner, I click my mouse and click on Settings. In this text box, I search for UAC and I open Change User Account Control Settings. I will put the slider all the way down and press OK, followed by Yes. And as you can see, when I now start a program that has elevated privileges, I no longer get this annoying message. Using the Tell a Friend program, you can increase the update period of your version of Folder Hider and that of your friends by 6 months. If you have a friend that may be interested in Folder Hider, log on to the Folder Hider website and simply send him an email using the Tell a Friend program. After clicking the Tell a Friend button on the homepage, this page opens. I can see my license number that will be used, my email address and the Tell a Friend code for my friend. Some rules that basically state that I cannot use it for myself and that my friend has to buy a license using this Tell a Friend code. My friend will receive an email with this text. If I want this text to be in a different language, then I can select a different language before I press the send button. I will enter a personal message. And the email address of my friend. And I press send. If my friend actually buys a version of Folder Hider, then he simply buys a license just as we have shown you earlier in this video. And when he can press the pay button, then here, down at the right side, there is the text box where I can enter the Tell a Friend code. I open up the mail and using copy and paste, I copy the code. You could copy this entire line, but best is just to copy the code. If my friend pastes the code here and then presses the pay button, then after payment, both our upgrade periods are extended by 6 months. Should he make a mistake and not copy the entire code or a wrong code, then the upgrade period is not extended. Should you by accident not paste the right code or perhaps forget to paste the code at this time, simply send us an email. If you are entitled to an extended period, we will correct this. Should my upgrade period be over, then I am lucky, because in that case the upgrade period is 6 months starting from the time my friend made the purchase. The recover item itself is a menu that holds 3 items: email logon credentials, show logon credentials and show website logon credentials. If I select email logon credentials, I will be able to resend all login credentials to the email address I provided. When creating my users, I did not specify any extra information to be supplied. So in the screen I enter the username and I do not care about capitalization. and I enter info@folderhider.eu as the email address, and I press resend login credentials. And I can see an email was sent to me with a username and password. When you purchase Folder Hider, there are some password settings in the Folder Hider website that you can use. I will go to the website, log on, I go to the password settings. Besides resetting the password for the website, I can alter settings for two options. I can select that user 1 and 2, so the first two users created in Folder Hider, can use Folder Hider to see the website's logon credentials. True is yes and false or not set is a no. As the second option, I can set if and when the Folder Hider program logon credentials may be shown. If the username is a 100% match, or if the username is correct but not minding capitalization, or as a third option, where also numbers in the username are disregarded. So when we have a John123 with a capital J and a capital H, then a 100% would have to be John with a capital J, a capital H and 123. For the second option, John 123 without any capitals would be a match. And for the third option, John without capitals and numbers would be a match. As you can see, we have selected the third option. So back in Folder Hider, recover, show logon credentials. I enter my name without minding capitalization and press retrieve logon credentials. And as you can see, it found the username Clemens with a capital C, and it also retrieved my password. If you feel that this is a security issue, then you can simply disable this in the website. And should you need it at some point, then at any time can you change this back to true. When we went through the menu option Show Logon Credentials, we showed you how you can set password settings in the Folder Hider website. In the website, you can set that user 1 and 2, these are the first two users that are created, can show the Folder Hider website logon credentials on screen using the Folder Hider program. As we have set this option, we can use it. I will make sure that I am logged on as either the first or second user, and I press Show Website Logon Credentials. And I will now get a pop-up giving me the website logon credentials. Although it is just a test account, we cannot show you the complete credentials, so the password is covered. So using all the password options that we provide, you should always be able to get access to both the Folder Hider program and website. If you do not use these options and can no longer access either of these two, then you have a problem. If you select Check for Update from the File menu, you will see after a little while a pop-up that says that you are using the latest version of Folder Hider, or that a newer version is available on our website. As we are up to date, I press OK to close the pop-up. Folder Hider comes with the ability to change the language of the program. There are over 60 languages to choose from. However, most of these languages are computer generated and these translations may be poor and incorrect. So you might ask, why did we include all these languages? Of course, one obvious reason is that people that do not understand English are better off with a poor translation than with no translation at all. But we hope that in due course almost all translations will be translations that are corrected by humans. And those translations will be pretty good. So we made it very easy for anybody to make changes in any of our translations. If you noticed that the translation is incorrect, you could start up Translation Correction from the File menu and make changes to a translation. Search for a phrase, make a change, and press OK. Translation correction lets you see all our translated sentences in a chosen language, together with the original English sentences, or a different language. But it is best to select a human translation to compare and not a computer generated. In this way, you could go through all our translations quite fast and make changes where you would like. We think that quite some people will share these corrected languages through our website. You can upload a translation or see if there is a translation for you to download in the Translations section of the Folder Hider website. Translation correction has its own help video and we encourage you to watch it. If you want a full video explaining translation correction, you can press this button. We go back to Folder Hider. When you get back, it may appear that nothing has changed yet, but in order to load our new translations, you would need to close the program and restart it. As mentioned, we estimate that for 99.99% of the users, the protection scheme provided by Folder Hider is enough to keep your documents from being accessed by unwanted persons. However, if you have hackers among your friends, or you simply have documents that you want to be as safe as possible, then you might decide to encrypt these documents. Encryption has the advantage that you get the highest possible protection against unwanted access. But there are some risks involved. And because of these risks, we want you to always keep an original copy of the file or files that you want to encrypt before you use encryption. If you do not keep a copy of such an original file or files, then you willingly take the risk that you will no longer be able to decrypt such a file or files back into their original state. And that would mean that the content of that file or those files will be lost forever. What can we tell you about the encryption scheme that we use? In most cases, computer programmers will only use AES versions combined with salting. We do not want to tell you too much about what we use, because the less we tell, the harder it will be to crack. But we will call our system Pepper, which is a bit spicier than salt. Our Pepper system only requires that a file to be encrypted is not smaller than 2 kilobytes. In theory, the AES encryption system does not have a backdoor and nobody should be able to easily decrypt any encrypted files using AES. However, a certain former employer of the NSA claims that the NSA does have a backdoor. So to be sure, we do more than simply use AES. If encryption is important to you, then we also urge you to take a subscription to Folder Hider, as we will from time to time make changes to our encryption-decryption algorithm in order to make it even harder to crack. Perhaps you want to know if encrypting a file gives you 100% certainty that only you can access that file, or anyone that you share the password with. The answer remains that 100% certainty does not exist. Cracking a program like Folder Hider has to do with knowledge and experience. Cracking an encrypted file is all about endurance. If you have access to a decryption program, then it is a matter of trying something like 1 million different passwords. The password 123456 will probably be about the 6th time that they try to crack my password. So in order to be safe, I have to use a longer and more difficult password. If, however, you do not have access to a decryption program, then you let a computer try all kinds of decryptions. In theory, the AES protection would take a computer many years to crack a decrypted file like this. When I want to encrypt a file, I have the option to protect that file with a password or not. If I use a password, then that will increase the safety, but I must not forget my password, which is case sensitive, or I will no longer be able to decrypt the file back into its original state. I open the encryption page. And as I do want to use a password, but I also never want to forget it, so I choose the unsafe password 123456. I enter it here a second time, 123456, and now I will click the button that will allow me to select the file that I want to encrypt. A window opens and I select a Word document that I want to encrypt. And press this button to start the encryption. Once the encryption is finished, I will get a pop-up stating that the encryption succeeded. There are two kinds of errors I could get. The first would be a message stating that I cannot encrypt a file that is already encrypted. And the second would be encryption failed with some kind of reason. Your drive could be full, or perhaps the file is less than 2 kilobytes. I will now open Windows Explorer, and in the folder where my Word document is, I will now also see a document with the same name, but with the extension FES. FES stands for File Encryption System. It is important to know that Folder Hider does not delete your original file. It will only create an encrypted version. You could now cut and paste or copy and paste the encrypted file to a folder that you want to hide using Folder Hider. I can also easily encrypt an entire folder of files. When encrypting an entire folder, there is one thing I must keep in mind. All files will get the extension FES. So if a folder contains two files where the names except for the extension are identical, then one of these two files will not be encrypted. Folder Hider will show which files were not encrypted, and I could make some changes. Another reason that a file cannot be encrypted is when it is too small. In general, a file needs to be at least 2 kilobytes in size. Normally this isn't a problem, as storing one letter of the alphabet in a Word document already creates a 12 kilobyte file. I click Select Folder to encrypt, click on Yes, and select the ABC folder. It will show the message that multiple files were found where the part of the name before the extension is the same. It shows the total number of times that an identical first name of a file occurred, but it will only show the first two files as a sample of what exactly the problem is. So I could now fix the problem. I open up the original ABC folder. The install file has two versions, one with the ini extension and one with the doc extension. Also, there are two files that start with the name setup, and also I see that there are some files smaller than 2 kilobytes. For the files where the first part of the name is identical, I could copy the file, rename it and then encrypt it. But the downside of this is that I would have to remember the correct name after decryption. The best solution is to use a compression tool. If you do not have a compression tool, use the internet. Search for 7zip and you will find a great and free compression tool. I will now select all files that would not be encrypted. So that includes the small files. I start my compression tool. And I will add compressed to the name so that I'm sure that this name does not exist. And I can now move or delete the compressed files. Another benefit of using a compression tool is that although it usually is used to make files smaller, it is also easy to increase the file size. If only one small file would not be encrypted, then I can use a compression tool to simply add some random files with the only purpose to get a larger file. Again, I click on Select Folder to encrypt. Yes. And again, select the ABC folder. This time all files are encrypted and stored in the encrypted O2 folder. In order to use the Word document I just encrypted, I will have to decrypt it. So in the File menu, I select Decrypt. I enter the password that I used, 123456, and now I click on Select File to Decrypt. I double click on the encrypted file And I now will get a message stating that the decryption succeeded. Should the decryption not have succeeded, then there are basically 3 errors I can get. File is not valid is an error I will get if I selected a file that wasn't encrypted, or if the encrypted file has become corrupted. If an encrypted file becomes corrupted, then you have a problem and the content of that file is lost. There is nothing we can do about that. That is a price you pay for using encrypted files. And that is why we always urge you to keep a copy of the original file before you encrypt it. Invalid password is a second error that you can get. And of course you will get this error when you try to decrypt a file and use the wrong password. Should you have forgotten your password, then you will not be able to decrypt that encrypted file. We do not have a backdoor, so we cannot help you with this. And this would also be a second reason to keep a copy of the not encrypted original file. The third error is the error stating that the decrypted file already exists. This error is not such a big problem. Folder Hider tries to create your decrypted file, but a file with an identical name already exists in the map that contains your encrypted file. Most likely this is the original file, or you already at some point decrypted this file. We would recommend that you first check if this indeed is the file that you want. If so, you no longer have to decrypt this file. If not, we recommend that you either rename that file by simply adding the word old or the number 2 or move it to another location. Once you renamed or relocated the file, you may try again. And now we will decrypt a complete directory that we encrypted. I click on Select Folder to decrypt, yes, and select the encrypted O2 folder. And I now get a message stating that a folder decrypted01 has been created. All decrypted files are stored in that folder. If I click on Future Updates, I can see a list of new functions we have planned to integrate into Folder Hider in the future. When I click on an item in the list, I get a more extensive explanation about the selected future update. It is our goal to have a new release of Folder Hider at least twice a year. We think that in this way a Folder Hider subscription gives you a good value for your money, and we can only advise you to buy such a subscription. You can buy a subscription through our Folder Hider website at any time. However, buying it together with Folder Hider itself will give you the best value for your money. When you buy a subscription, you decide for how long this will be and you pay for that complete period. When the subscription is over, there are no obligations. The subscription and the period that you can download updates end at that date. When the subscription period is over, you are free to buy a new subscription or not. Sometimes you want it not to be obvious that you are using an application. If you have an icon on the desktop called Folder Hider, then someone might wonder what it is that you have to hide. So we can imagine that you do not want a Folder Hider shortcut on your desktop. But how can you start Folder Hider without an icon on the desktop? Open up Windows Explorer, click on the C drive and look for a folder Program Files or Program Files x86. In almost all cases, these folders will be located on your C drive. I will open the Program Files x86 and I will see if there is a folder named Topsys. If the Topsys folder was not located in the Program Files x86 folder, try then the Program Files folder. In most cases, when you do not have a 64-bit version of Windows installed, you will not have a folder Program Files x86, and then it will be in the Program Files folder. But as this is a 64-bit version, I have to go to the Program Files x86 folder. Open up the folder, open up the Folder Hider folder, and there should be an executable Folder Hider. There it is. This is the file folderhider.exe and it is of the type application. In the way you set up Windows, it might be that the .exe is not visible. If you want it to be visible, you could ask your favorite search engine how to do this in your version of Windows. Alternatively, if you are a Windows 7 user, you could watch the Map Hider help video. There we show how it is done using Windows 7. In Windows 10, open up Control Panel, Appearance and Personalization, File Explorer Options, go to the tab View and uncheck Hide extensions for known file types. So this one should not be checked. There is no harm in this, and actually it can be quite convenient. Okay, we're back in Windows Explorer. As you can see, the .exe extension is now visible. And if we double click Folder Hider, it would start up. But as it is already started, I do not have to do this. It is not really hard to start Folder Hider like this, but if you would need to do this multiple times in a day, then it can become boring. It would be nice if you could limit this to only one time. And with Micromise you can. To hide a regular application you can press Minimize. And the application is no longer visible on the screen itself, but it is now on the Windows taskbar, most commonly suited here below. I cannot drag it up unfortunately, but I will double click it and here it is again. So this is not a very good way of hiding my application. Windows keeps track of all programs that are running. I can show you by pressing Ctrl-Alt-Delete. In Task Manager, I can see that Folder Hider is running. I now select Micromise from the File menu. I get a reminder, move your mouse all the way to the left and double click to restart application. And in the Task Manager I can now see that Folder Hider is no longer actually running. And indeed Folder Hider is closed. A different program called Boathook, which is small in size and small in every other aspect, is loaded and active on the far left side of your screen. Should you have multiple screens, then it is on the left side of your main screen. It is 1 pixel in width and it is transparent, so it is close to impossible to see. Move your mouse all the way to the left of the screen, preferably in the middle where Windows has no functions like at the top or at the bottom. You can double click the mouse button. If you double click the left mouse button, Folder Hider will start up and Boathook will remain active. When Folder Hider has started up, I can see that I was automatically logged out as a user, and if I wanted to hide or unhide a folder, I would have to log in as a user. If I select Micromise from the Help menu again, there will be a message stating that Boathook is already loaded. Folder Hider is closed and I can press OK to remove the message. I will again go to the far left side of the screen. I choose a spot somewhere in the middle and I double click with the middle mouse button. Now Boathook shows its version number in a pop-up. I press OK and go back to the left side, and this time I double click with the left mouse button. When Folder Hider has started up, I can now simply choose Close to simply exit the application. I move the mouse again to the left side of my screen, but this time I use the right mouse button to double click. If you double click the right mouse button, Folder Hider will start up, but Boathook will no longer remain active, and you can no longer start Folder Hider by just double clicking on the left side of your monitor. So, if you leave your computer unattended for a while, you could use Micromise from the File menu. Doing so makes restarting Folder Hider very easy. If I select File Recover from the main screen, if I select File Recover Email Login Credentials, the screen is opened and now I can go back to the main screen by selecting Main Screen from the File menu. The program Folder Hider has two states, movable and locked. If you see the top bar with the name Folder Hider, then the program is in its movable state. The Folder Hider icon is also displayed on the taskbar. I can move the screen and send the application to the taskbar. I click on the icon on the taskbar and it's back again. But if you do not want Folder Hider to have an icon in the taskbar when Folder Hider is running, in that case you press this square. You will see that the top bar of the program is removed and also the icon in the taskbar is gone. In this state you can no longer move the program around. The screen stays fixed. When you close Folder Hider and at some point start Folder Hider, you will notice that it starts up in the state it was and at the position it was when you last closed the program. When you leave your computer unattended, you might decide to use this option to more or less hide the running application. And although we created a micromise option for this, you could more or less hide the application from sight. But you might run into a problem, and therefore we show you here how to overcome that problem. So Folder Hider is still in the non-movable state. If we press the square again, then Folder Hider is set to its movable state. And I can move the program all the way to the left, so that only the right side, where the square is visible. I click on the square and I place another screen on top. Nobody can see that I'm working with Folder Hider, while I'll go and get myself a refreshment. I'm back and I move the screen that is on top, and now I have a problem. I can only access the close button. I close the application and start it up again. Because it remembers the state and the position, I still have the same problem. Should you encounter this problem, press the close button with the right mouse button. You will see that Folder Hider changes its state, and I can now again drag the screen and use the program. If you want to exit the application, you can choose Close in the red box, or you can choose Exit from the File menu. If you want to exit Folder Hider but start it up at a later time, then you should take a look at Micromise. Hiding a folder with the same name twice is, as you may imagine, not such a smart move. On my computer, I have the ABC folder. On the C drive, I will make it hidden. Right now the folder is hidden and I will open Windows Explorer. And simply create a new folder ABC. By doing so, I can no longer unhide my ABC folder. As you can see, unhiding the ABC folder now brings up an error message. But also trying to hide this new ABC folder gives me an error. The message mentions that there already is an ABC folder hidden, and that therefore this new ABC folder cannot be made hidden. The best thing to do is not to create a new folder you made hidden. Sometimes, however, this is done by a program. In that case, you could temporarily rename the new created folder and unhide the hidden folder. At this time, you can again use the unhidden folder, but you might also decide to copy the content of the temporarily renamed folder to the unhidden folder so that this folder now again is complete. This concludes our video of Folder Hider. We hope you found it useful.